control plant growth in challenging tropical climate-changing cultivation in Thailand. What is Dutch horticulture? Controlling climate inside, plant control, turnkey and reduce risk, all parties, and how to make produce locally possible. Co-founder of DATT Company, Ltd, co-founder of Agri Solutions Asia. From the Netherlands, Menno Keppel.
สวัสดีครับ My name is Menno Keppel and I work for the company Agri Solutions Asia based in Thailand, and I'd like to share you some know-how about how we grow in Thailand and how we work in the challenging environment in Thailand. I'd like to tell you first my start in Thailand with my partner, Thomas Ruiter. We started 15 years ago at the age of 24, and we faced all the problems you can imagine starting a hydroponics farm and growing in the Thai tropical climate. Today I want to share you more about the know-how I gained with growing in Thailand, and then later sharing that know-how with other growers and customers. So our company has started actually with selling and distributing seeds, and from selling seeds started to help farmers sell their produce under the brand Take Me Home Tomatoes in Thailand. 15 years later, I can tell you we are the expert on tropical climate and growing inside either a greenhouse or growing rooms. Not knowing the future back then, we now have a company that is supplying a lot of growers, from small local growers till large companies in Thailand. And my partner Thomas and me started actually with growing in a greenhouse in Chiang Mai in Thailand. Both we were from Dutch origin, and we started helping to increase yields for local farmers so they make more money. And we wanted to share the technology that we had from Holland and adapt it to the Thai climate. And because we wanted to increase the yield per square meter, we needed a solution that was local. And by adapting the Dutch horticulture standards and Dutch horticulture inputs, we reached our goal. And we became very successful growers of tomato. As you can see, the brand Take Me Home Tomatoes is well known in Thailand. But with all the know-how that we gained, we learned to share something more important, and that is actually to help other growers succeed in growing. Now our company, besides Take Me Home Tomatoes, Agri Solutions Asia is selling all the inputs for professional greenhouse growing, and that can be from simple plastics till complete grow rooms indoor with LED for cannabis. And for that, because all of you have some link with cannabis, I want to share with you some of the problems growers face and some of the solutions we help them with. And I'd like to tell you upfront that every solution is different, but it comes down to basically the same standards. When I started helping farmers locally, you can see on the picture, it was a lack of know-how, wrong inputs, and mostly driven by trying to achieve a cheaper solution, saving cost instead of actually increasing yield and increasing the investment per square meter to then have an increased amount per square meter in money. And so we did that with very simple basic steps. And one of the examples here you can see is by adapting the raised beds or gutters, and come with a way for a grower to grow in such a way that he doesn't come into these errors and these problems that are not needed. So I would like to touch with you, what is the problem in Thailand and in horticulture in the tropical climate. And that is basically the temperature. Not the outside temperature, because we cannot change that one, but we can actually change the inside temperature. And because I was also, I didn't have the right inputs locally, we found out that our basic problem was our climate. And by solving the problem of the inside climate indoor, we started seeing results in production per square meter. And I will come back to this picture a little later, because here it's clearly visible that the inside temperature of our greenhouse, this is a graph of that, and the outside temperature are completely different. And normally in the greenhouse industry, the outside temperature is actually lower than the inside temperature. And that means that it's hotter inside the greenhouse than it is actually outside. And in our case, it's not like that. But let me come back to you on that a little later. Our problem was innovation. We needed to actually reinvent ourselves. And how we did that is actually by basically innovation. So 15 years ago, we grow on poly bags on the floor, on the most cheap greenhouse you could find, that I see a lot of growers also in cannabis starting to do that now. And that is actually okay. But we learned that we never really made money because we couldn't grow year round. So we started to look in a way how to do this year round. How can we make use of our assets the whole year round? And so we did that by simple automation. And the automation on itself doesn't make money. But what it does, it helps us to actually reduce the cost of plant loss. And plant loss and stress are a combination of problems that we do not want to have. And so innovation is actually very important in your plans for greenhouse growing. So many people ask me, how do I grow my crop and what should I do? And most people say, the reason that we want to grow in a greenhouse is because of crop protection. So that means keep whiteflies out, keep thrips out. And that's a valid reason, but it's not the main reason why we want it. The real main reason for what should be is actually a microclimate. And if you think about it, it's actually making sense, because if you would go to a country like Holland or the US, they have greenhouses that are completely different from greenhouses that we have, let's say in Spain, Israel, or any other location. And so in the top here, you see a greenhouse that is a Venlo type. You see this if you go to Holland, and that greenhouse is actually heated. And so when you heat, you create a microclimate. And the same goes for the desert. We use pattern fan systems, and we build them all next to each other, 2 meters apart. And we blow cool air that is high in humidity into a drier air greenhouse. And all these systems work because they are adapted for the local situation. And the question is, do we need a greenhouse for the Thai climate or for the tropical climate, which is mostly lowlands? And so our company focused on that. And we tried all the models from Spain, from Israel, and we didn't get a crop year round. We did it in the cold season very well, but not in the hot season, nor the rain season. And so our model of greenhouse is actually focusing on airflow. Our philosophy with this was that we didn't want to spend a lot of money on a greenhouse, and we didn't want to spend a lot of money on electricity, running exhaust fans or pet fan systems that need an exhaust fan. We wanted to have more a way that we can make use of the climate that there was. If it's hot at the daytime, that's okay, as long as we have airflow. And so we looked at a model where we have basically no hotspots. So if you have heat located in your greenhouse that is stuck, that is a big problem, because if there's no airflow, it's the same like you sitting in the car with the windows closed and no aircon. It's going to be too hot. But as soon as there's wind moving or blowing with a little open window or a ventilator, it's actually okay. And so with the UV mapping, we found out that our model works for that if we have enough airflow. So we have a limit of how big we build. We don't build just like the size of any land. We have a calculation for that. And the other thing is, and there's a misconception, the model of the greenhouse is not only the only thing. It is actually how it operates. So it works as a chimney, and having a top roof or a double vent doesn't mean that there's enough airflow. So what we learned is that with this normal type of greenhouse that has no special exhaust or can add humidity, we could actually grow year round with our tomatoes. We did use some shading, and we had fantastic results by the airflow of the greenhouse. And in this one, we actually grow on gutters as well. And this benefit a lot for us in the year production. So the question to you all would be, besides growing cannabis or any other crop that you want to grow, why do you want to grow, and can you manipulate your plant? Because if you just want to grow a plant, you can. But to be able to manipulate a plant is a whole different level. It's very complicated to tell the plant what you want it to do, especially if you do not have any control on that. And so there we go back to this first picture that I wanted to share with you. This is the readout of our climate computer, and the outside temperature is 36.9. Inside is 29.5. You can see the line, and this is a readout of an average day in the hot season. And this is made in May, last May. And you see that the humidity is dropping, the temperature goes up, and the inside temperature is coming down. Sorry, it's not coming down, it's staying down. And the reason that it doesn't go up as fast as it goes with the outside temperature is just because we make use of shading, we remove the UV, and still have enough growing light. And we take out the peak with our model of greenhouse. And that is a simple solution to adapt to the local climate. And I can tell you that because we have multiple greenhouses, the other greenhouses don't show this graph. And I don't have to show you the graph to make you feel the difference either. Because if you would walk into this greenhouse, you would actually tell that it's cooler. And I think that's the real trick from this development of making our own tropical solution. And for that, I would like to add one more thing, and that is data. We need data to actually analyze. So the graph that you see before comes actually from the climate control computer. And we adapt our computers to the local circumstances. Again, the climate computer with irrigation, as you see here, is nice. However, it really doesn't work if you don't integrate it. So if you really want to control your climate, you got to be able to do that from a centralized location with one computer. So you have an integrated solution. And our solution is local. So we are local, we have our local service people here. And if you want to know whether a valve works or not, you can just open it and close that valve. So how does this work? Well, in the picture left, you see the greenhouse. So this is another gutter system we have that collects drain. And in this case, we irrigate from the irrigation unit that is controlled by the climate computer and has a user computer that we log in with. So anywhere from the world, you can log in, whether you're at the beach or you're in your office or you're in your farm, and you can basically start a cycle to irrigate. And with that, I think the trick is that you can then control your plant growth. And if you are able to control your climate inside your greenhouse, you're able to control your production. And when you are able to control your production, you can influence the way you make money. So how does it work? Because the irrigation computer is not just fertilizer, it is also that you can control the climate. So we have a sensor inside the greenhouse that reads out the temperature, humidity, but also, for example, light, CO2, and we can then open or close certain vents, irrigation lights. And so it all comes from one central location. So sometimes we only supply the irrigation and climate control for these locations, and sometimes we build turnkey projects. But all to all, whether it's in Australia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, or Thailand, we help these growers to manipulate their plants and get the right data. We also focus a lot of lead on light and add light to our greenhouses. Everybody thinks that there's enough light in Thailand, and I can tell you it's not. So what we do in our nursery, we add our own light so we can manipulate the plant more. And what we learned from that is you need a different lighting for an indoor room or a grower room that we can supply compared to, let's say, in the greenhouse with the nursery. And what we also learned is that even using HPS is good, but with LED it gives us far more tools to manipulate the plant. And because of Thailand is kind of hot or too hot and too humid, we'd rather use LED so that we don't heat up any of the rooms any further. What we also see is that with the spectrum, if you want to manipulate the plant, we use more of a spectrum and also the tools to increase that spectrum. And we have very good results with that with some of our suppliers. And what we also see is that, for example, in growing rooms, our supply of LED gives less heat, so we can then less cool down and save energy. And we can also manipulate the plant more better by having that spectrum control. And last but not least, I would like to say to you all, if you build a greenhouse in Thailand and you want to grow whatever you want to grow, ask yourself, do I have enough ventilation? And whether it's raining or not, if it's too humid or too hot, you will benefit from having ventilation. It would only be if it's maybe too cold that ventilation, you want to stop that. But from 15 years of experience, you can rely on one thing, and that is if you have ventilation, your plant can breathe and it can adapt. And it actually can help you control the climate inside your greenhouse further. And so our results with the tomatoes on the left side are really good. And on cannabis, that kind of works the same. And I know that the picture on the left with tomatoes looks like it's abroad, but this is really in Chiang Mai. We are growing like this and it works fantastically. So if you're interested to learn more about that, please reach out to me. So my presentation is ending here. I would like to give you a conclusion on some of the points that we learned here in Southeast Asia. One is that we adapt the technology that we have, whether you pull any technology in from Spain, Israel, US, you need to adapt some of it. And we have done that with the Dutch horticulture, and that is still leading in most of the countries as well. Most of the inputs come from Holland. And if you want to learn more about how we do that, let me know. The climate control inside your greenhouse is very important to control your plant growth. And that is really coming from the climate, not only from the fertilizer or the irrigation. And when you build something, do it with the idea that you will do it turnkey, so that when you start, you're really ready to grow. Building it in phases with different suppliers might be a good idea, but at least then control everything that you need in that greenhouse. Because when you risk not growing, you will lose a lot of time and a lot of money. And I've done that for many times, so I can tell you from experience that it's not ideal. And last but not least, try to make produce locally possible. We have a lot of experience with that, and also in marketing and sales. but being able to grow a crop here in Southeast Asia is actually the most important, so that everybody here in Thailand can benefit from it. So we're really happy to help anybody with the setup or with advice on that. So please let me know. And last but not least, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in and listening to some of the stories that I share with you today. I don't want to take too much of your time. And for now, I would like to ask if there's any Q&A, then please let me know.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for a Q&A right now, but okay. I believe you're going to be very popular in our discussion panel this evening, as well as future sessions that we have. And we definitely appreciate your innovations in horticulture and bringing your experience and expertise here into Asia to help not only the cannabis, but basically all crops. So people can learn how to basically the difference between outdoor and indoor, as well as creating your own climate and all these other automations and processes that they can put in place to improve livelihoods as well as crops and everything. It's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing this.
More than welcome. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share all this